circulatory system. And anyone, what's the function? What's the function of the circulatory system? An idea? What's the function of the circulatory system? And for example, let's say, oh, give me 1 second. I know where the noise coming from. Give me 1 second. Let me. I'm back. I'm back. Yes. I'm in my basement. I have a dehumidifier. It is very noisy. So let's come back this again. What's the function of the circulation? What is circulatory system? I've heard of the system
Would
before. Yes, please.
Sorry, would that be to bring oxygen and nutrient to the body?
Exactly. That's the part of the transportation of our body, and have road. And the thing is, do every single species, or even every single animal, has a circulatory system? Do you think so? Do you think every single? Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the answer I expect, but the answer is no. And I'm not sure. I come from China, and probably some of you also was born in a different country. And the United States, amazing is that even for the very rural place, you can find a road there. But at least in China, if you want to go some places, there's no road, no car can have access, and in that places go slow. It's a slow place, slow rural places in China. So why I give this example? Just think about is some animal that are really, really slow, like this one. Can you see this one? Starfish. Anyone have eaten starfish?
No.
No, even Chinese don't eat starfish. So, I mean, there's nothing to eat in a starfish. But so basically, starfish, very, very slow. For a slow animal, I mean, they slow and small. They basically, many of those animals do not really have a circulatory system because they don't need to. They do not need it. There's a fast transportation system to go through. So, and then this whole transportation is circulation, the only way of transport things in the body. To transport stuff from one place to another place, do you think circulation is the only way to do something like that? And this is a plant, look to be potato. So what's happening in the plant? Do you think a plant also needs transportation?
No.
It does, right? So in the plants, the roots are taking water from the soil, and then the water need to be transplanted up. At the same time, the leaves generating the nutrition from the sunlight, and this nutrition need to be transplanted downward. So in all of the plant, you can look outside. You see the trees, the grasses, all of those water coming up, and the nutrition going down. So in this case, it's for the plant. They do have transportation and very efficient, to be honest. However, this is not a circulation. It's only one way, down from up, and up for water from down to up, and nutrition from up to down. So there's no circulation. So in animals, that's the special thing about the animals. The animals, we have a circulation. So the nutrients. What is circulation? What's the difference between the circulation and the plants that we call it vascular system? So the circulation means the same stream circulating the body, and that's just like it's not really I mean, I try to say the subway, because in China, in Beijing and Shanghai, we also have this circular path subway. But I don't think in New York City, do we have any past subway that's circulating, keeps running? I don't think so. So, but anyway, this same stream keep circling the body. And some places, oxygen coming on board, and some places oxygen going off, and some places nutrition come on board, and some places nutrition go off. So at different places, something come up, something going down, and this will actually where the oxygen coming out, where the nutrition is on board, and then where we discharge our waste. All of those we're going to talk about in the future topics. The respiratory system, the urinary system, and the digestive system. We'll talk all of those. But for everything, the very fundamental thing is you need to have a circulatory system, the heart system, and then let's back to the evolution. If you're the first time, many of you are the first time in my class, you see something very different in my class. In this case, I often talk about evolution. I try to compare human with other stuff, and something, sometimes at least for me, um, something I really appreciate. I'm a human being. It's some very small action that we have. For example, I can talk now, and we can stand, we can sit here. Everything here is after a billions year of evolution that we have this, and so it's not easy. Very simple thing is not easy here. So in this cases, the circulatory system evolve from different passes, and in the evolution, let's talk about something a little bit different than the circulation. Do you know what's dragon? Have you seen dragon? Anyone has seen the dragon? Not real dragon, jaw dragon.
I was
You
about to say, is that a
Yes.
trick question?
No, no. I mean, you mean how many feet does the dragon have? 4 feet, right? Am I right? And you can Google dragon, and 4 feet and 2 wings. In total, dragon has 6 limbs. And unicorn. You know what's unicorn, right? I guess anyone saw a unicorn? A special unicorn has one horn right on the head. So my question is, which one do you think is more possible to be real? A dragon or a unicorn?
A dragon.
Why a dragon? Why a dragon? Just guess, right? So I would say unicorn is more possible. Why so? Because just think about all of those large animals on land. Have you ever seen anything large land animals with more than 4 limbs? Think about human: 2 hands, two arms, two legs, 4 limbs. Birds: 2 wings, 2 legs, 4 limbs. And turtles, four legs. All of those has only 4 limbs. That's because for the animals to crawl out of the ocean to be able to live on the dry places, it happened only once. That's evolution. Evolution is the outcome of the events of a very low possibility. And some of those is because we are lucky. And some of those only happen once. And the animals getting out of the ocean to the land happened only once. And at other times, this our old ancestor has 4 limbs. That's why all the descendants have 4 limbs. We'll talk about this one because circulation is something different. Circulation is one of the few features that evolve independently. In many cases, independently evolved. And why this thing can be independently evolved? It means this feature must be very, very critical and give the animals a huge advantage. That's why something can evolve independently. And then see here, do you see the evolution tree here? This is the tree of evolution. It shows that there's major 2 group of animals. Can you see this? Major 2 branches here. One branch is human and the starfish. The other branch is the bugs, the arthropods. So what's the major difference between this side and the other side? I guess anyone knows? I guess I mean I'll be astonished if you know this. The difference between this one, the human side, and the bug side is that in the human embryo, the let me ask another question. It'll be weird. How many holes do we have? In most cases, how many holes do we have? Me, us, and the bugs. We have mainly we have two holes: the mouth and the anus. And the major difference between this branch, the left branch and the right branch, is that on the left branch, the first hole that develop is the anus. We in our when we are an embryo, we first develop the anus. On the other side, the thing that first develop is the mouth. That's a major difference. But anyway, at the beginning, you see the letter no and no. At the beginning of both branches, there's no circulatory system. And then keep moving up. So both branches independently develop this circulatory system. And again, as I mentioned, that's all because that this system is so important, give us a huge advantage. And also at the same time, so what is the biggest bug you have ever seen? How bug can be? Have you seen any bug as big as me, as human? A human-sized bug? No. Why? Why bug cannot grow bigger? We'll ask this question again and again in the future. That's a very, I mean, that's a let's see how to say this. That's a very interesting question. Why bug cannot grow larger? And one of the issue is that the bug has a totally different circulatory system as we do. This is similar to our circulatory system. This is a earthworm, and this similar to the bug, to the insects circulatory system. In the insects, we call it the say open circulatory system. So what is the open circulatory system? They have a kind of a heart. However, this heart is only served as a pump. For example, I'm now in my basement. What if my basement is full of water? If my basement is leaky and then there's rain and basement is now full of water. What I can do is I have a pump, have a one hose down to my basement and pump all the water out of it. However, the other side, my basement is still leaking. My wall is still leaking. And then when the water is pumped out of my basement, it gradually will going back to my basement. But it's slow. At least it's slow. So this is something we call it open circulatory system. So in this case, you can see the insects. There's a vessels getting out of the heart. When it going, it does not. This is the same vessel does not really coming back directly to the heart. It's released the fluid outside the heart in somewhere everywhere in the body, and then it coming, and then the other side, they're open end tubes to collecting the fluid back to the heart. Just imagine they have a pump trying to pump water out of my basement, and then in another animal, this is a earthworm. What is the biggest earthworm you have seen? How long an earthworm can be? Earthworm is something very, I mean, it's not a very complicated animal. This is earthworm. Can you see that? This is an earthworm. It's somehow bigger, even bigger than some small snake. How can an earthworm can grow so big? That's because earthworm for somehow they independently evolve into a closed circulatory system. This is the earthworm heart, and the blood getting out of the heart is always stay in the blood vessels and getting back. And so if the blood always retain in the blood vessel, this we call closed circulatory system. And what's the benefits of a closed circulatory system? The benefit is that so you can give really a high blood pressure, and this high blood pressure can pump the blood really fast, really not fast, and fast and far away. And then for all the animals with a closed circulatory system, they tend to be bigger. This is the blue whale, and this is a giant squid. They can be bigger. So again, what kind of let me see. Yeah, I have a question in my exam. Now you remember. Okay. So, and what kind of animals? What kind of animals have a closed circulatory system? Only three types of animals have closed circulatory system. Vertebrates. You know what's vertebrates? Animals with internal bones, with a backbone. Vertebrates. And this squid and octopus and the earthworm or leech. So only three types of animals have the closed circulatory system. And let's move on. So now let's move on to the vertebrates. Vertebrates have mainly they actually five categories: fish, amphibian, reptile, birds, and mammals. Here I'm only showing four of those. And even we have the closed circulatory system. Yes, please.
So I have a question. So
Yeah.
basically, animals who have a closed circulatory system are normally animals that have high blood pressure.
Yes. Yes, that's a very good. Yes. And also and then they can grow larger.
Okay.
For the exam purpose, I remember I do have a question about here. So which kind of animals have closed the circulatory system? The earthworm, the vertebrates, and the this is called cephalopods, the squid and octopus. Yeah. Okay. So now let's get into the vertebrates. In the case of vertebrates, at the very beginning, here is a fish. There's only two chambers in the fish, and the blood coming into the heart, and the heart pump. So this is the gill, and this is the tissues. The heart pump the blood into the gill, acquire oxygen, and then after the gill, there's no longer any pump existing anymore. And in this cases, the blood supply is very slow now. And after this blood supply is low. And at this moment, the blood pressure is very low. That's a very good question you mentioned, the blood pressure. At this moment, after the gill, the blood pressure becomes very slow. And this is a big issue of the fish. The fish overall metabolic rate is very slow because the blood cannot grow very fast. And then starting from the amphibian, in the case of amphibian, now you have a two circuits. What are two circuits? Amphibian use their skin to breathe. So the blood go into the skin to acquire oxygen, and then after they acquire oxygen, they do not directly go to other tissue to deliver oxygen. They're coming back to the heart to regain some power and then heart push them into the tissue that require oxygen. So this we call it two circuits. For amphibian, now there are two circuits. However, in the case of amphibian, there's only one pump here. In this one pump, this is in the center of the heart. The oxygen, the blood have oxygen. We call it oxygenated blood, and the blood that does not have oxygen, we call it deoxygenated blood, mixed together. So in the case of a frog, the blood will never be super high. Will never have a super high oxygen, and that's why the frog do not really have a high metabolic rate. And only in the mammals and the birds, the two circuits are completely separated from each other. And then now we develop this, each two pump. Now, in the case we have two pumps. Each one pump blood, pump the oxygenated blood. Another one pump the deoxygenated blood. And then let's talk about the human one. So this is the human circulatory system. Now we see in the case of human, we have this systemic circulation or systemic circuits and the pulmonary circuits. What's the difference now? Okay, so let's start maybe here in the center. The human heart has four chambers, and this four chambers, and they are divided to the left side and the right side. On the right side, there's a ventricle and the atrium. So we have left ventricle, right ventricle, left atrium, the right atrium. So in this case, in both cases, atrium is on the top and the ventricle is the bottom. Ventricle is normally much stronger than the atrium. So ventricle is really the pump. Atrium is the receiver of blood. The ventricle is the pump. So ventricle, very powerful. For example, here, let's start from here, the left ventricle. Left ventricle is the most powerful chamber of the heart. It pumps the blood all the way into the big blood. That's called aorta. And this left ventricle, they receive the blood is oxygenated blood. And this oxygenated blood go all the way to the aorta and through all the arteries go into the tissue to deliver oxygen. And after the oxygen return to the blood, when they return to the blood, to the heart, they do not return to the left side. It starts from the left side, but they do not return to the left side. They return to the right side. In the heart, another thing to easy trick thing here is that on the left side is always the oxygenated blood, and on the right side is always the deoxygenated blood. So when it coming back to the right side, they already delivered oxygen, no oxygen here, and then they go received by the right atrium, and the right atrium is relatively soft. I mean, not soft, thin. It pushes the blood next to the right ventricle, and the right ventricle pump the blood all the way into the lungs, starting from the right ventricle. Now this we call it the pulmonary circuits. Why they call it pulmonary? Because pulmonary generally we call it whenever we refer to the lung or respiratory, we call it pulmonary. So they push the blood all the way into the lung, and in the lung, the blood get oxygen. The deoxygenated blood becoming the oxygenated blood and return to the left atrium. So now you return to the left now, and the left side now you have the oxygenated blood, and the left atrium push blood all the way into the ventricle and start again. This is why I call it circulation. The blood always circulating, and so tomorrow in the lab we go through this circulation again. Am I too fast? Let me know if I'm too fast, because realize this time is not much time. Okay, so let's focus on the blood on the in the heart now. So in the heart, how the heart can pump blood, it's basically simply is squeeze the blood outside the heart. However, looking into this, let's focus on this one, left ventricle. In the case of a left ventricle, if the left ventricle squeeze, contract, the left ventricle is connected to both the left atrium and the aorta. Here, this is aorta. So, if the left ventricle contract, why the blood does not going back to the left atrium, but the blood only go into the left to the aorta? Why so? Because there is a gate or a valve. This to prevent the blood to prevent the backflow of the blood. In these cases, when the left ventricle contract, the pressure coming here to the valve, and then the valve connecting the left atrium and the left ventricle will close. And when the valve close, no blood will pass across the here. So the blood, and then they can only go into the aorta. And another thing, have you ever thrown something onto the wall? Like when you're really angry, throw your cell phone, your mouse into the wall. I mean, it happened to me when I yelled to my daughters. But anyway, so When you throw something to the wall, it generates sound, right? See, in this cases, when the left ventricle push the blood all the way to this valve, it generates a sound. Do we have a sound when our heartbeat? Yes, we do, right? Boom, boom, boom. It's actually mainly two sounds. The first sound is louder. The second sound is relatively lighter, not like boom, boom, and this boom, where coming from? Left ventricle. Push blood all the way to this valve, and this valve, what's the name of this valve? Mitral valve or bicuspid valve, and somewhere here in my slides, you can find it. This is called a mitral valve or the bicuspid valve, or there's another name called it left AV valve. There's three names, and then this is the first sound of the heartbeat, boom, because the left ventricle is the most powerful. And who is the second powerful chamber in our heart? In the heart, the second powerful chamber is the first powerful is the left ventricle. And you may think the atrium is the second powerful, but it's not. The second powerful chamber that can contract is this, aorta. Aorta itself also can contract. So the second sound, boom, the second sound actually because the aorta contraction. When the aorta contract, it also pushes blood further forward into the blood vessels, and some of those coming back, pushing down to another valve, and this valve is called aortic valve. They're coming back here. So that's the valve and the sound of the. How many do I have? Oh shit, I have still a lot. Wait. What time? Oh, yeah, not that bad. Not that bad. All right. Okay, next, let's talk about how does the heart beat. The heart has four chambers, right? And four chambers, let's see. Anyone interested in machines, chemical, mechanical structures? Do you know the cylinder? No? Okay. You know, there's a big truck called V8. What V8 means? It has 8 cylinders. And normally a regular car has only four or six cylinders. So in our heart, we have 4 cylinders. They are not equal, but still 4 cylinders. Left ventricle, right ventricle, left atrium, right atrium. And these 4 cylinders, how do they contract? That's the major thing we talk about in the cardiac cycle. And here, for the exam purpose or for the future, I mean, the most important thing you want to remember here is their sequence of a contraction. How do they contract? Number one rule, if you have a notebook, you can write it down. Number one rule is that the 2 atrium contract together, and the two ventricles contract together. So that's number one rules. And then the rules number 2. The atrium contract first, and then the ventricle. Then rule number 2. And rule number 3. For each of those heartbeat, in most of the time, let's say 80% of the time, the heart actually relaxing. The heart is relaxing. And only so it takes about, say each heartbeat is about 0.8 seconds. And the heart contraction only lasts for about 0.2 or 3 seconds. So in most cases, it's like, if you can see my hand, it's like this. Most like relaxing, boom, boom, boom. Like relaxing most of the time, and then there's a long relaxing, and then contraction. And then we have a name for it. When it's relaxed, we call it diastole. Diastole. You can find the word in my here. No. Diastole. This relaxing time we call it diastole. And systole. Diastole, systole. Diastole, systole. Like long diastole and the short systole. And then if you have 2, now you have the atrium and the ventricle. What happened here? atrium, ventricle, and then atrium, ventricle, atrium, ventricle, and then both of those have a long diastole. Atrium systole, ventricle systole, and long diastole, and then atrium systole, atrium, ventricle, long diastole. That's how the heart works. The atrium contract first, and then very shortly followed by the ventricle contract, and then both relax for a very long time. So this is the key thing about a cardiac cycle. Now we just I assume we finished hard. I mean, it'll be too fast, I know. Let me know if you have any questions. So next, the blood will get into the blood vessels. So have you heard of an artery and a vein? What's the difference between artery and a vein? There's a very tricky
Veins have
question.
valves.
Yes, please. Can you say it again?
Was that a rhetorical question? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Veins have valves. Arteries don't.
That's a very good answer. Yes, vein has valves. Why? Vein has valves. Interesting. Yes, vein does have valves. Yes.
I say artery take blood away from the heart and veins bring blood to the heart.
You're amazing. Yes, that's the correct answer. Actually, I was expecting the red answer is that the artery taking the oxygenated blood and the vein taking the deoxygenated blood. That's the wrong answer. Okay? No. The key answer is that the artery is taking the blood away from the heart, and the vein collects the blood back to the heart. And that's why the vein has valve. Because who is the pump? The heart is a pump. And the artery is nearby the heart, so in the artery has a very high blood pressure. It does not, because of high pressure, the blood cannot going back, so it does not need a valve. However, when the blood goes through the capillaries, it already lose most of their pressure, and then how you can prevent the blood from coming back? Now you need a valve to prevent the blood from coming back. So the valve so the vein has valves. So let's say, let me repeat the key issues here. The artery take the blood away from the heart through the capillaries, and the vein collect the blood back to the heart. And let me see. Coming back here, there's some major artery and veins we need to talk about. In the systemic circuits, the aorta is the artery that takes the blood outside the heart, and then it goes through the tissues, deliver the oxygen, when coming back to the heart. This is called superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. I think vena cava is a Spanish or Latin word. It means something empty because it's huge, nothing there. So superior and the inferior vena cava, that's the major vein from the systemic circuits. In the case of systemic circuits, the artery carry the oxygenated blood, and the vein carry the deoxygenated blood. And then when we start the pulmonary circulation, the artery that deliver the blood outside the heart, we call it the pulmonary arteries. There are two pulmonary arteries, one to the left lung and the other to the right lung and the left lung. And through the lung, it going back. This is called a pulmonary vein. In these cases, in the pulmonary circuits, the pulmonary artery actually carrying the deoxygenated blood, and the pulmonary vein carry the oxygenated blood because they go through the lung to acquire the oxygen. And by the way, why I'm repeating this one, because I remember I have some question in my test. The major veins in the major artery and veins in the systemic and pulmonary circuits. Okay, next. So because the heart pulls the blood into the blood vessels, and blood vessel is flexible. Let me see. I think I forgot one thing. Yes, I forgot one thing. I was making the exam this morning. That's why I still remember the exams. So I think we will talk about this later in the lab too. Let's focus on arteries now. In the case of artery, oh, that's too much. But anyway, yeah. So most of the blood vessels have three layers: the internal layer, the middle layer, and the outer layer. And their names. The internal layer, call it tunica intitia. Where is it? Tunica, oh yeah, here. Tunica intima. And the middle layer call it tunica media. And outer layer call it tunica adventia. So I'm focusing here is the artery tunica media, the median layer. Why I'm focusing here? Because this is the layer that have smooth muscle. And why the artery smooth muscle is important. Let's say this. Have you ever have a flush in your face? Say you're so excited, or like me, I saw in my middle school, high school, I just finally have a chance to talk to the girl that being in my dream. So why you have a flush in your face? That's because the arteries that deliver the blood into the face relax. And this is very important thing. The artery can change their size, larger and smaller, in terms of different conditions. So, and how the artery can change their size, because the smooth muscles. We will talk about this artery smooth muscles again in the future. And the thing is, which type of arteries have this smooth muscle, have the largest proportion of smooth muscles? Let's come back here. In the case of aorta, actually it does not really need that much of the smooth muscles, because this aorta itself does not regulate. Aorta is always wide open. It does not need a large regulation. For all of those large arteries, they do not have a higher proportion of smooth muscles. They mainly have the elastic proteins. But in most cases, what kind of arteries that need a large proportion of smooth muscles? The medium size. Don't have it. The medium size arteries, because in the medium size, let's say the artery that deliver the blood into the liver, the artery that deliver the blood into the face, I mean, etc., etc. All those arteries actually do need control their size, and then they have the larger proportion of smooth muscles. Yeah. So next, let's talk about the blood pressure. Anyone have ever tested blood pressure? Or anyone hasn't? So all of us have that.
Yes.
I get it. Yes, right? So what's the blood pressure? Do we have blood pressure, the same blood pressure everywhere in the body? The answer is no. Now, so we test here, the blood pressure here. And so this is because here there's a major artery beneath it. So in this case, only the artery has a very high blood pressure. Why? Because when the ventricle contract, it sends a lot of blood into the arteries, and then it generates high blood pressure. And then when the ventricle is relaxing here, the blood gradually flow, and right before the neck contraction, you have the lowest blood pressure. So the high blood pressure, we call it systolic blood pressure, and the lowest blood pressure, we call it diastolic blood pressure. And why it is important? Why it is important? The low blood pressure, and both either low blood pressure and high blood pressure are very say it's bad. Neither of those are good. And what I'm trying to say here, okay. The key thing is we need, high blood pressure. What happened in the high blood pressure? Stroke. I mean, if people have a blood pressure more than 200, there's super high chance that this guy will have a heart stroke and brain stroke. And what happened in low blood pressure? People may die. Actually, falling in coma. So either way, we need to regulate blood pressure constantly. And here in today's class, we only talk about what is blood pressure. And basically, blood pressure, actually, this kind of blood pressure we talk about only existing in the artery. After the capillary, there's extremely very low blood pressure in the vein. And in the future test, in the future not future test, in the future topics, we'll talk about mainly three type of a way that we can regulate blood pressure. There's a long line. We'll talk about in the future. And then between the artery and the vein, there's another type of a blood vessel. It's called capillaries. And capillaries is the places where we have the matter exchange, oxygen coming out and in to the blood, and also nutrients, and also waste. So to say basically achieve such of the matter exchange, the capillaries are very thin. We talk about the vein and artery both have 3 layers, but in the artery, in the capillary has only 1 layer. Only the tunica intima, tunica intima, yes, only the very thin layer, 1 layer of endothelial cells right here. We'll talk about endothelial cell later. And then in our body, we also have mainly 3 type of capillaries. Most common one, this we call it continuous capillaries. They are tightly bind to each other, and only some small molecules can go through, can pass the capillary, called continuous. And some of the capillaries, they have pores, big pores. We call it fenestrated capillaries. And for example, the kidney. The kidney, you need a large amount of the blood vessels to go through the pores, and that's where, I mean, you have the fenestrated capillaries. And then lastly, sinusoidal capillaries. In the case of sinusoidal capillaries, there are gaps. There are gaps between the blood, the endothelial cells, and these gaps allow the cell to pass. Where you want the cells get in and out in the blood vessels. The bone marrow. In the bone marrow, you need the cells get in because the bone marrow is where the blood cell is generated, and you need to have a lot of gaps to allow them to get in. And I think this last slide. Yes. Now, lastly, let's talk about. After all, this is the transportation system, and for a transportation system, you need to carry something, and what kind of things that the blood can be carried. And so there are mainly 3 types of things that the blood can carry. One is the soluble matters. What are soluble matters? Sugar, amino acids. Carbon dioxide is considered a soluble matter, but actually they are largely carried by other mechanisms. But mainly sugar, amino acids, and some vitamins, and the salt. Ions, they are all soluble. They can just carry by the water in the blood. The blood is more than half the blood is made of water. And then the blood also can carry things that can water soluble, which is called water soluble. And then the blood can also carry things that can dissolve in the fat. So what kind of thing can dissolve in fat? Fatty acids. So the blood can also carry fatty acids. But the blood carries fatty acids in 2 major ways. One way is that in the blood there's a protein called albumin. The protein can carry some of those molecules that cannot be dissolved in water, but it can dissolve in the oil. And then there's other particles. All of those we'll talk about in details in the future. Called lipoproteins can dissolve in some small oil droplets in the blood that can be carried. And then lastly, what's this most difficult thing to be carried in the blood? Something that cannot be dissolved in water and cannot be dissolved in oil either. An idea, what's the most difficult thing to be carried in the blood? And something we really need. Oxygen.
Oxygen.
Yes, oxygen is super difficult to be carried in the blood. In that case, how we can carry this? Special proteins. in the human called hemoglobin. All of those originate from one original protein. This is amazing about evolution. Without evolution, without this protein to be evolved, there's no us because we cannot carry oxygen. And it's amazing. This protein only evolved once, and then this protein further evolved into different forms. For us, eventually our protein evolved into carry using the iron to carry the oxygen. And the others, anyone have ever killed a crab, a lobster? You don't see the red blood. If you kill a shrimp or a crab, they do not have the red blood. Their blood is blue because they use the copper to carry the oxygen. So, but either way, there's basically the categories, major categories of things that can be carried by the blood. And I think that's it. That's all for the first topic. Let's see. I'm so far good in time. Let's take a break, and we come back at 7:15, and we have another 1 hour of a lecture of a topic 2, which I think I can slow down a little bit. So let me see. Let me stop sharing, and maybe I can start.